Hello, everyone. Good morning. Another beautiful morning here in CAP161. I'm just excited to share with you a few more examples of visual notes and path-space relationships, part of our diagramming module, module 3.2, looking at diagramming techniques a little bit further, as well as visual notes, practices, building on some of our diagramming techniques, but further combining small sketches and other notes and text and other types of things together in combined compositions, relationships in both our sketchbook pages and then as a series of final drawings. So here are some examples from me. This happens to be an 8.5 by 11 horizontal sketched in the field. We were doing some interesting past iterations of this module in past years, and so we have on a single sheet of paper I have what is very close to probably an isometric view of the entrance pavilion of the Owsley Museum of Art as it relates to Riverside Avenue passing in front of it. So this involves some decisions in terms of how much real estate I was offering to the paper, and then maybe looking at the building in Google Earth, because we do have three-dimensional views. I'll show examples of that later on, of that entrance pavilion, and then using both a combination of sketching and diagramming techniques to show the path-space relationship between the different hierarchical paths that happen there, the automotive traffic, bike and pedestrian traffic on Riverside, the number of pedestrians that do choose to cross Riverside Avenue coming from Teachers College and the AT building over into the Old Quad, and how one might pass by or engage this particular entrance pavilion. Before COVID, this is a drop-off point for folks who do visit the museum for special events, catered dinners, receptions, and the like. So this addition to the Owsley Museum of Art in the former Fine Arts Building was done by Browning Day Mullins Deerdorf in the early 2000s as a way to complement some of the architecture that's there from the Fine Arts Building. The Fine Arts Building dates from about 1937, and so it's got a great collection of architectural details on the outside and inside. Do check out the fire-glazed tile walls on the second floor as you go up into there. Very interesting. Plus, the entrance pavilion has some stained glass from the McNaughton building, which was a downtown Muncie department store, later on known as the Ball Stores, when the Ball family had their own department stores. So very interesting entry sequence that happens from Riverside Avenue as it goes through that door, through the entrance pavilion, what I call the entrance pavilion or the entrance tower, a little bit of what we call compression and release, and then a formal procession as you go up this formal staircase to the second floor and then enter the Museum of Art from that side. You'll notice also there's a lot of sculpture from the collection featured in this lower lobby, which serves as a nice lobby for the geology and archaeology departments here at Ball State. George Schreiber or Schliebe was the architect. You can, if you're interested in this building further, do check out some of the historic building plans and drawings that are featured in our digital media repository. Another sketch, probably a perspective sketch. It reads as a perspective. It reads also a little bit of it as an elevation, but more of a one-point perspective of the sculpture court, which is located on the second floor of the Museum of Art. So we have a partial section, we have a perspective sketch, and we have a partial isometric that are combined together with sketching practice as well as diagrammatic practices, all on this single sheet of paper. You can see that I used a variety of technique. I used a variety of line weight. I used a variety of pens to create emphasis, and a very loose, fast, sketchy kind of feel to it. I had completed this particular drawing probably in about 30 minutes, just to give you a point of reference there. As you start to become comfortable laying out sketches and visual notes, the speed in which you were able to execute these drawings will serve you well. Another example from the Chicago field trip. Unfortunately, this year we are not doing a Chicago field trip, but this exercise was conducted during one of our Chicago field trips, and it was intended to be a complement to this previous page because these were examples of the drawings and diagrams and sketches that we would be doing in the field. So again, this is an overhead, probably an isometric view of the Riverwalk and how the Chicago Vietnam Memorial engages the two levels of Upper Wacker Drive, brings folks down from Wacker Drive down a processional staircase to a water fountain, and then engages the Riverwalk. So we have a lot of different systems that are happening or engaging here that the Chicago Vietnam Memorial does well in terms of bringing people together. Incidentally, this project by Carol Ross Barney and Sasaki Associates, landscape architects, Carol Ross Barney is the architect of record, was served as the first phase of the Chicago Riverwalk project, which continues to open up different portions of the riverfront to the city. Great project and collaboration between Carol Ross Barney Architects and Sasaki Associates, now Gina Ford of Agency Landscape and Planning. But this particular memorial space is a very somber space and a very sobering space to those who visit it, and it's very important to consider all the different sensory things that are happening there. The fountain creates some white noise which masks the traffic. There are sights and scents and sounds that come from the Riverwalk and the Chicago River. So what I did is combine this this isometric view sort of from overhead. I looked at the site in Google Earth to give me a sort of an aerial reference. I then sketched this 1-point perspective character sketch or character view in the corner here, and then I used my markers to start to build up the beginning of a site section. So the cut, if we imagine the cut through the earth that starts from Wacker Drive and then brings us down through these amphitheater-style seats, as well as these staircases, the fountain itself, and then the levels of the Riverwalk. This would represent like a cut through the earth, and so I used, I believe it was a yellow marker or an orange marker to gray that out. When you scan an orange marker or a yellow marker, it shows up as a soft gray when you scan it in grayscale. Another sketch from probably one of our class periods right here at CAP, where we take students out for a walk. This is Beneficence here on the Ball State campus, sculpted by Daniel Chester French, same sculptor as Abraham Lincoln, and on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. This sketch was done entirely with a Pentel sign pen, which is a bullet-tipped, felt-tip pen, which allows you to get several different line weights depending on the way that you hold the pen. And at the time, it's no longer the case, but Benny had a lot of trees surrounding her and enclosing her space. Now those trees and shrubs and box hedges have been removed, and so Benny is much more open than she used to be, but there was a fairly enclosed or tight space at the time, involving a series of box hedges and evergreens at the time, as well as deciduous trees in the background. But this is an interesting sketch for me in my portfolio because of the way that it combines several drawings together. You can see a site section at the bottom. It probably has the most line weight, the most tone, and the most character. But you can clearly see Benny as a silhouette, as a figure here in the center of that sketch. But there's a lot of tone, a lot of blackness, and a lot of ink here building up. Kind of a busy sketch, but at any rate, I believe that probably sketched the site section first. I then sketched the plan. So I carefully wanted the site section and the plan to line up together. And you can see how I sketched in the capitals, or column capitals, academic lamps on top of these capitals, how they line up and start to form the space around Beneficence. We then can see a very loose reference to the two sidewalk paths that go back into the quad space. The formal lawn in front of Beneficence facing south. And then I worked in a tiny thumbnail character sketch with some heavy shade and shadow because Beneficence is made of bronze, directly emerging from the plan. So again, character sketch, plan, and site section all combined together on a single page. These drawings can become very rich and very meaningful for us as drawings line up together and start to represent a mass and void in interesting ways on a page. This is a diagram I did a few years ago starting to describe the interesting path that occurs between Robert Bell Building, what is now the Letterman Building, the Ball Communications Building, and then into the Art and Journalism Building. A lot of movement, a lot of systems occurred. There's the cow path, which has two-way pedestrian traffic going from the old quad to our north residential neighborhood. We have a lot of busy traffic here running on McKinley. We have a couple of seating nodes on either side of the Letterman Building itself. And we have these interesting ways of navigating through the buildings. Folks who work in these buildings do enjoy the ability to walk between these four buildings on rainy days and on cold winter days. The idea that one could go from their office or lab or classroom from Robert Bell and be able to walk entirely through an enclosed hallway to the AJ building to grab a cup of coffee or lunch or other refreshment is very attractive for a lot of folks who work in these buildings. But there's a lot of things that happen along the way. There are different staircases, there are different circulation points, there are different circulation nodes, there are views out, there are enclosed spaces, there are open spaces, there are permeable edges that are established. There's lots of great Qing vocabulary terms that one can start to emerge and note as we run through that. This runs pretty much like a circulation diagram, if we remember from Unit 3.1, from Module 3.1, or a bubble diagram, or even a concept diagram. But it's building on our diagramming skills and note-taking skills to start to record some interesting phenomena that we are observing here in the built environment. So we encourage you to start exploring your Ball State campus in new and interesting ways. Interestingly enough, Smith Group JJR, whose planning team is led by Michael Johnson, who has a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture from Ball State and a Master of Urban Design from University of Michigan, did our 2015 Ball State Master Plan, which is in the process of being updating right now. There are some wonderful surveys right now that encourage students to input some of the new data going into the update to the master plan. But during that 2015 master plan, they did a wonderful series of diagrams that talked about how the Ball State campus functioned spatially and how these different relationships, path-space relationships, occurred, and some of the things that they started to see emerging from the existing conditions. So here's a diagram in a diametric view, I believe, of the old quad, so the Ball Gymnasium, the Arts Terrace, and the Museum of Art, North Quad, Burkhart Building, the Administration Building, and Lucina Hall, how it starts to function around the old quad. Here's that path that I just talked about, the connection between Robert Bell, Letterman, the Ball Communications Building, and AJ. There's this interesting corridor that links all four of the buildings together. And what they said is that we see these interesting states of path-space relationships here on the Ball State campus. If we're looking to the future, that maybe this is an idealized state, that there might be a system of connectivity through the balance of active exterior and interior spaces. So what this firm is doing, this is an interdisciplinary firm, planning, landscape architecture, urban design, historic preservation. They are observing some of the interesting things they're seeing on our campus, and then they are presenting an idealized state that there would be an interesting union of active interior spaces and active exterior spaces to really make the interesting way of moving through our Ball State campus might include a combination of walking inside and outside, so that one can start to navigate the Ball State campus for their lunch hour, or on a break, or for exercising, or from going from class to class in an interesting dynamic way. So very interesting diagrams that they've started to put together to create the idealized state, and it reflects further in their plans for the campus itself. We look at what we call the North Core, or the University Green, plus the College of Architecture, Planning, Business Building, Bracken Library. Their current state as represented in Google Earth imagery. And then they do have some proposals for the East Mall, which is under construction right now, as well as a reconfiguration of University Green for an idealized state. Of course, our new multicultural center is under construction right now, as well as phases of the East Mall. North Core initiatives. This is a different view. I believe this is an isometric view or possibly dimetric view. You can see them starting to think about more enhancements, as well as a very clear drawing here, a representation of the East Mall proposal, which is under construction now. They have some wonderful, wonderful diagrams in this master plan. So I encourage you to flip through it, download it from the Ball State website. Just Google Ball State Campus Master Plan. You'll find it very quickly. It's a PDF, about 16 megabytes that you can download to your personal computer. But they have some wonderful diagrams that explain a lot of the intentions of the master plan, and they also start to create some nice references to the path-space relationships that we're talking about here in terms of how our different campus buildings and landmarks line up, how people move through these different spaces, and how different ideas and configurations can really enhance our campus experience. Again, an interesting view of that path-space relationship going through the four buildings. Some examples of student work from past years. In the problem statement, we have a list of building sites or building outdoor space sites that have interesting path-space relationships for you to look at. So read through the problem statement and work with your instructor in terms of selecting possible sites. Here are some examples of past student work from the I would say late 2000s that we started to build up some examples from. So this is a plan view of Robert Bell, Letterman, Ball Communications, and AJ, and this is a description of the path-space relationship as it relates to this interior corridor, but also the outside. There's a very formal axis that runs through Letterman from the cow path through the building and through the bell tower all the way to the ashtray and the business building, which could very well be enhanced. There are other diagonals that occur as people move across the quad from Frog Baby to the library. We always put together a little bit of a legend as well, so we understand what all of our different shapes and symbols and paths start to do. This became a wonderful example because this student started to combine aspects of the floor plan of Letterman and Ball Communications. This is Ball Communications here. This is the second floor level of Letterman, and then started to, like a comic book artist would, start to create these fun little thumbnail sketches within windows that he referenced then to the path. Very interesting way of approaching the project. Some wonderful contrast, line work, line lettering, as well as line weights to describe some of the phenomena that he was experiencing. He noticed that there was an interesting framed view of the bell tower from inside Letterman that involved changes in elevation as expressed by stairs and ramps. He noted an abundance of natural light coming through different skylights, and other changes in elevation and other views that occurred throughout this path. So, and you might ask, well, where does one get a floor plan of the building? Well, or these different views. Well, if you just look at the three-dimensional feature of Google Maps, you can fly over the campus and literally fly over it. We fly, yeah, and get different overhead views from three-quarter view. Gives you a great base reference to draw from. So you can print this out and trace over it to get a good feel for it, or trace it into your final drawing. Start to create some base imagery so we understand the difference between mass and void, and then start to layer your diagrams over the paths that you are starting to observe. That'd be one way to approach the project. Another is to, as you look through these different campus buildings, you'll note that there's an evacuation plan by every staircase and by every elevator, and you can just take a camera shot of that particular building's footprint and floor plan wherever you might be. This is where my office is on the third floor of CAP in the western part of the facility. So in the past we used to have to ask for floor plans of these buildings. Now our campus floor plans are available on every single floor as part of our evacuation plans. So always nice to take a camera shot of these different things and see how your different campus buildings are laid out in plan. Gives you a great idea and a great basis from which to start to sketch and diagram the different spaces that you're seeing there. Other views, this is an interesting configuration here of University Green with Schaefer Tower and all of the different movement. Kind of a busy diagram, but really rich in terms of the connections that it starts to talk about. Lots of text here starting to describe what the student is experiencing, and an interesting composite here of the four buildings. This is an interesting node, description of a node, describing the staircase of in our journalism building as being a node because it comes from a change in condition from a narrow corridor all the way into the openness or open feeling of the AJ dining area, and how all that natural light comes together. So it's an interesting spatial experience, and so the student decided to express that in this visual notes and diagramming set. Here's a number of students. This is 2 different students. You can see an abundance of tone and line weight and shape and symbol and text all coming together to describe some of the spatial phenomena that one experiences as they look through these different campus buildings. Some really fine work happening here with pointillism and tone and line work and line weight. Some very, very careful work here, careful lettering and careful tone, describing these different path-space relationships occurring on outdoor situations as well as interior corridors and hallways and nodes and meeting spaces and the like. So we pinned all these up in past years and started to really enjoy the different variety of diagrams and drawings and visual notes that came together. So, thank you. Please read through your problem statement and address questions about the problem statement to your instructor, and start to discuss different possible building and outdoor sites, and begin to collect a visual inventory of photographs, sketches, and notes of different path-space relationships here at the Ball State campus. Thank you very much.